Hello, mate, to Thrive Nation. I've got Dr. Mark Rowe, and he is an expert on burnout, on lifestyle medicine. He's written an incredible book, The Vitality Mark, and his TEDx talk is brilliant. It's funny, it's comical, it brings out the most incredible points on health and wellness, and it's a privilege to have him on the show. So, welcome, Dr. Mark.
Steve, thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be here.
If I had one wish for 2024, it would be multiplying you and having a million Dr. Marks out there. So I just think this is so important. And I do want to jump straight into adrenal burnout. Having done a lot of corporate work, and a lot of corporates listen to this, and high executives and CEOs. We're working with the biggest bank in Africa now, Standard Bank, which has been a privilege in looking at their exco teams. But just maybe define what burnout is firstly, and then give us a real story of a male and female avatar that came to you with burnout, and you didn't just use a pill for every ill, but you use lifestyle medicine to change their lives, to transform their lives, and to deal with something that is just so pernicious and so pervasive in our world.
You're so right. It is so pernicious and pervasive, Steve. And what I would say, and there's a lot I can say about burnout and share with your audience, burnout isn't fatal and burnout isn't final. Burnout can become a brand new start to step forward into a new understanding of the importance of health, of sustainable self-care, and understanding that really, if you're going to sustainably take care of anyone else in the world, whether it's your organization, whether it's your family, you need to also take good care of yourself. If you think of the idea of two hands, we can reach out with one hand to serve and support others, but the second hand goes back to support ourselves. And burnout is incredibly common. Before the pandemic, I mean, they were saying that perhaps 1 in 3, maybe up to 40% of people were experiencing burnout at one stage. I think it's probably more since the pandemic. And of course, burnout is really defined as a combination of, firstly, emotional exhaustion, feeling emotionally flat. As I say, it's, if you imagine yourself as being like a car, it's like the tires in your car are flat, they're low in pressure. You're losing your mojo. You're feeling more irritable, more stressed, more reactive. And, you're losing your inner happiness. You're just depleted. So that's the first thing, emotional emptiness and emotional exhaustion. Secondly, that feeling of, depersonalization, just becoming detached from your sense of purpose, from your sense of who you are in the world, from your sense of your connection to your community, your connection to your workplace, to your organization. And thirdly, a sort of lack of personal accomplishment or achievement. In other words, it's like you're the hamster on the wheel and you're running faster and faster and faster. And the harder and faster you run, you're getting less done. You're becoming less effective. It just seems that, no matter how many emails you clear, they're just coming in faster than you can clear them. So that's really what the symptoms of burnout are. And I'd like to really give you a good story, because there's so many great stories I can share from real life experiences. I always change the names, for confidentiality reasons. But I'm just going to tell you a little story about somebody called John. And John was a pretty infrequent attender. I only saw him with a few kind of sports-related injuries over the years. But he came in to see me, and his face was just completely, expressionless. And he sat down and he just said, he didn't know what was wrong, but he just couldn't take it anymore. And he just felt completely exhausted. And when his girlfriend came in with him, who I knew better, and as she gently prompted him to really tell me what was really going on, he actually started to cry, Steve, which is something that, men don't do often, certainly in this part of the world. And he started speaking about, his sleep difficulties, how, he felt such a failure. I think that was his perception, that he felt that because of how he felt, that in some way he wasn't good enough, he didn't quite match up. And he lost his kind of zest or his mojo for life itself. And he was exhausted. It was like if you imagine him as being like a sponge, a wet sponge, that's John at his best. He'd been squeezed progressively drier until now there wasn't another drop of effort left to give. And it had come on, and, you know, I suppose often a classic situation. He worked in the corporate world and he was always a hard worker, and, you know, he became noticed and he was promoted. So he got more and more responsibility. And I suppose somewhere along the way, you know, he just really became over agendaed, and you see it a lot, particularly with global corporations, when there's multiple time zones and then one member of a team goes down, so and you're left taking on the additional team members' duties, and you keep doing that. And after a while, if you're neglecting your own self-care habits, which John did, you see, he stopped exercising, which is such a great way to recharge from stress. He had, you know, he kind of gone back into his shell, which is kind of a classical stress response. You often see it in men, and he hadn't really been talking about how he felt. And, you know, it just kind of crept up on him over a period of months, until really that day when he kind of snapped and he told his girlfriend that he couldn't take it anymore. And she was desperate and brought him to see me because she was really concerned he might do something. And of course, at its most severe form, burnout can lead to suicidal thoughts and a severe sort of depression. So John needed some time out from work. He needed to go to a therapist for some talking treatment, which was very, very helpful, because talking treatment can enable you to see things a little bit differently, to understand that your thoughts and perhaps the beliefs you have about those thoughts aren't always true, or they're not necessarily something you're stuck with. You can choose to see things a bit differently. And so he did that. And then I worked with John, really, you know, with some, what I would call some sustainable self-care strategies. So these would include, you know, starting with a good night's sleep. So we work on a good sleep pattern. I'm not a fan of prescribing prescription sleeping tablets as such, because those things can cause side effects, and you can become tolerant, dependent, and addicted to them. But there are some kind of natural sleep aids that I would often recommend for people. I gave that to John. We got him to keep a written journal. That can be absolutely invaluable. It's a very old idea that the philosophers of old would have recommended, you know, the idea of getting to know yourself, getting to write down how you felt emotionally. It's called emotional journaling. And, you know, research has shown that it can be a wonderful way to allow you to have emotional catharsis, to get those emotions out on paper rather than suppressing or repressing how you feel. And that can build resilience and long-term well-being. It's such a simple idea, just writing down how you feel for 15, 20 minutes, 3 days in a row. But I also like to use a written journal to build a really keystone gratitude practice, because expressing gratitude, I find, can be a real antidote to feelings of toxic stress, to feelings of anxiety, to symptoms of burnout, to really appreciate how much you have to be grateful for, and use that as a stepping stone to move forward in your life. As I say, gratitude can bring perspective to the past, a sense of peace to the present moment, and a profound sense of hope for the future. And speaking of the future, then I worked with John to look at what I would call his best possible future self, or even, let's call it, your better possible future self. What does 1 year out from now look like for John in terms of his health, in terms of his fitness, in terms of his relationships, in terms of his professional development, in terms of his life? So you get somebody, you know, outside of themselves and moving forward into that better version of them. Exercise, the greatest pill of all for me. It's an absolutely keystone habit. We got John back into the gym, lifting weights. Weights release myokines, these hope molecules cross the blood-brain barrier to boost, you know, mental well-being and build brain agility and resilience, and of course do so many great things to us physically as well, in terms of our, you know, our cellular health and our mitochondrial capacity and so on. So, you know, people talk about food as medicine. I mean, I keep it really simple, just to eat real food, but just to be mindful about what you're eating, and try and eat lots of color and lots of plants and lots of real food to really support your microbiome. And of course, going back to the Harvard study of adult development, probably the leading indicator of our well-being is the quality of our relationships. So to encourage John to reconnect with his friends and really to have some fun. And, John used to love playing tennis, and he got back playing that, and he explored paddle, which is becoming very, very popular now as well. And so he just started to have more downtime. And, after a period of time, he got back to work. He spoke to his HR director, who was very supportive. He changed his role. And, that was a couple of years ago. And John does check in with me still every few months, which I think is a very good idea. To check in when you're not necessarily feeling unwell, and just to keep on top of everything. And he's doing absolutely great. And in his own words, and this is no word of a lie, Steve, in his own words, John has told me that his burnout became his breakthrough.
Yeah.
His breakthrough to building a more resilient mind, his breakthrough to building sort of a richer emotional bank account, to learning to say no to the trivial stuff, to know what's important, to really value his friends. And also what's really interesting, as John got better and as John really, I suppose, developed a really new appreciation of his health, as he became, as I say, more of an active participant in his own well-being, he became an advocate. And this is wonderful. I love to see that. When somebody who's been through the trenches, as it were, comes out the other side. And John has become a great advocate for positive mental health and for positive health in general, in his community and also in his workplace, as a sort of a wellness champion. And, I think that's really testament to him and testament to his courage and commitment to accept, I suppose, that he needed to change, but to embrace the possibility of that change and move forward into that better version of him.
Brilliant, Dr. Mark. And I mean, I know you're a medical doctor, and we say at Made to Thrive, if your doctor doesn't ask you about your sleep, your movement, your nutrition, and your relationships, you got to find another doctor, because I think they're so crucial, and that those lifestyle interventions are so important. But let me unpack each one. I think sleep, the fundamental part of just really the restoration that you need, the rejuvenation, the lymphatic system of just dealing with all these toxins and proteins that are developed in the day. Do you use wearables, and what type of natural sort of supplements are you using? Because I find if you don't have a bedrock of sleep, it's very, very difficult to deal with burnout, fatigue, tiredness, anxiety, and mental ill health.
Absolutely. I mean, some people like to use wearables, and as I say, to paraphrase Socrates, who back in the day said, know yourself. So it's all about getting to know yourself better and know what suits you best. And some people do like to wear wearables, and some people like to know what their pulse is every hour of the day, and their blood pressure, and also to use various measurements of their sleep. I'm a little bit old fashioned that way, but we're all different.
Yeah.
And I'm really into really finding a person where they're at and supporting them to move forward, whatever that means for them. But I'm very, very strong on a good night's sleep. And, Benjamin Franklin said, early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. So having a wind down time at night, really important, prioritizing an 8-hour sleep window. And I really do believe that if your sleep cycle is really highly attuned, you will wake up even without an alarm clock. And, I think one of the key ways in which people fall down, Steve, I'm sure you'll agree with me, is just too much technology too late at night. That blue light can be really so destructive for the melatonin levels, reducing it maybe by 50%. And that really reduces sleep quality and quantity. So really re-educating people about the dangers of the mobile phone, leaving it downstairs and getting off at a good 60 to 90 minutes before bed, I think is really, really important. And of course, there are so many other things that can impact negatively on sleep, from, caffeine, particularly too much caffeine late in the day, particularly given caffeine's very long half-life of about 5 to 6 hours, and its negative impact on the sleep switch. I think that's really good to know as well. If people are struggling with their sleep, I would sometimes recommend ashwagandha for people to explore that. It's used a lot in Ayurvedic medicine in India and in Asia, and there is science showing that it can be very effective to support people's sleep, and obviously some vitamins like magnesium and so on can be quite helpful. The timing of eating is very important as well. Some people have a habit of having a late night snack, and of course that's a time when your body is looking at winding down, and so it's best not to eat or drink anything really within probably 3 hours of bedtime. I think that's really, really important. And, of course, if somebody has disturbed sleep, it's really important to ensure there isn't underlying stress or mental health imbalances. So many people now are struggling with so much toxic stress in a world where there's so much pressure on people and where people are always on. Alcohol, of course, as well. One of the really interesting things about alcohol is how it negatively impacts REM sleep. REM sleep, as you know, is that period of deep sleep when we dream, but we also process emotions. The emotions we experience during the day, our fears and our anxieties. Our REM sleep enables us to process these. So if we become deficient in REM sleep, it means we're going to feel extra anxious and extra stressed the next day. So I know to be really mindful about the toxic impacts that alcohol can have, not just on your mental health, because it is a natural brain depressant, as it were, but also on your sleep pattern as well. And conversely, we talk about avoiding the blue light at night because it sort of tells your body and your circadian rhythm to wake up and get going. Conversely, getting some blue light early in the morning, in the earlier part of the day, particularly before 12, can be fantastic to really fine tune and then train your circadian rhythm and 24-hour body clock. And ironically, getting that blue light early in the morning can actually support a much sounder night's sleep as well.
Brilliant. And I think those are crucial. Sleep, I just find, is a bedrock. And we use wearables just because we know, eating, drinking, having alcohol, caffeine can really affect these. And some people are very data centric. So we find it helpful. Some of the ladies are not.
Yes.
I just want to go with, I just want to know that I've had 7 to 9 hours and that works well. So thank you for that. And I think in that last hour before bed, I want you to speak about journaling. We haven't had anyone on the show. It's 190 episodes now. The last 4 years, we haven't missed a week. But let's talk about journaling, just that maybe that sleep hygiene that you can use that hour to journal and help you process. And do you do that with meditation? Do you do that with prayer? Do you do that with breath work? Incorporate a little bit of maybe your own personal, what's worked with your patients and your clients over the years.
Yeah, I find that one of the really important ideas to learn and appreciate about sleep is that sleep doesn't start, Steve, the moment our head hits the pillow. Sleep is a process of wind down that starts 60 to 90 minutes earlier. So it's that idea that, work is finished for the day, mobile phones are off, and now I'm getting into this period where I'm going to wind down, relax, slow down, and get into a good night's sleep. So, there are so many different things you can do, and we're all different. But things I've seen work. I mean, some people like to just watch a bit of TV for a while and watch some comedy or something very lighthearted, not at some not intensive news or whatever, but just something really that they find a good kind of wind down. Other people find some breath work, can be very helpful. A mindful breathing exercise. Some people would like meditation. Meditation can be a wonderful habit.
Yes.
To engage with present moment awareness and to, if not still the mind, at least turn the raging ocean into something that resembles more closely a still pond, as it were, just to slow things down. Journaling can be incredibly helpful here too, in so many ways. Writing a gratitude practice has been shown to actually support sounder sleep at nighttime. There's research from America backing this up. But a little habit I often suggest to people at night is what I call WWW, which for me stands for what went well. So it's this idea that, this very old idea really, that at the end of your day, you review the day and you just focus on what went well and think of at least 3 things that went well. So it's a way of moving our thinking process away from the worries or distractions or stressors, and away from maybe what we might be doing tomorrow, and just focus on what went well. What went well today in terms of my exercise habits? What went well? Maybe a great coffee cup conversation with a friend. What went well in terms of my family? What are the little things that went well? What did I savor today? What did I appreciate today? You know, who was kind to me today? So it's just thinking about those small things, and writing them down can be very effective, because as you know, when we connect our brain through our hand to a piece of paper and write things down, you become much more intentional about what you express on paper. And that written expression, you can then kind of internalize that, as it were, in your heart and in your mind. So, you know, it's a really good way to kind of recharge from the stress of the day, move you away from that stress state more towards, you know, recharge and the parasympathetic system of Vegas, as it were, and just chill out zone. And, you know, I find the journal can be very effective. I often suggest to patients to keep a little notebook or journal beside your bedside locker when you're actually in bed. Just take it over, and just takes a few minutes. And it's just such a lovely little habit. And of course, you can look back over the weeks, and you can just see all the good things that have been happening in your life, because of course we're all so hardwired for negativity. You know, the way our brains are designed, you know, they're built to keep us alive. They're built for survival. So we're hardwired to experience fear and stress and struggle, as it were. So we're not hardwired for happiness. So we can tend to discount all the good things that are going on, all the good little things we've experienced or the good work we've done. So keeping a little track of that can be very, very, very helpful.
Sure. Brilliant.
Sometimes I recommend a hot bath, Epsom salts in the bath. Now, in Ireland, certainly people have been taking out their baths in recent years. It's become a thing, you know, putting in these extended showers. But if you're lucky enough to have a bath every so often, having a bath at night, it can be a very mindful practice, just to sit in the warm water and just maybe close your eyes and breathe, or just focus on all the things you have in your life to feel grateful for, all the abundant blessings you have in your life. And of course, one of the really interesting things about the bath is when you get out of the bath, Steve, that drops quite quickly your core body temperature, which turns on your sleep switch, which can enable you to get much more quickly into a deep, restorative, relaxing sleep.
Sure. Wonderful. And I think instead of www and a website, what went well, that's really profound and fascinating. I think actually you probably need a website, www.whatwentwell.com or something, with some of your like little tips there, Dr. Mark. I think that's
Thank you.
Absolutely incredible. And it's these little acronyms and these, you know, that we built for survival. You know, that's why I called my company Made to Thrive, not Made to Survive. You know,
I
so
love it.
our brains are survival mechanisms, and we get this amygdala hijack. And, you know, we were just talking offline with Dr. Mark. He came to South Africa and he had a really good holiday in November last year and felt safe and that. So, yeah, we got to make sure that we're using the parts of our brain that can move us to thriving and not survival. So important. So the first thing we say was sleep. Look at that, which is really powerful. Then the journaling, the gratitude practice, what went well, spending some time, possibly using a bath to get your core temperature to drop down, which is very, very important to switch that, you know, that melatonin switch on and really get the release of melatonin. And then now I think exercise is very important for your burnout patients and my burnout patients and clients, because this is a tricky one and a double-edged sword. So maybe you just want to unpack, you know, John's like really, really tired. and is exhausted, apathetic, not motivated. You spoke of myokines that are very, very important across the blood-brain barrier, what endorphins do as well. But it's a little bit of a tricky slope. So maybe take us through how you would grade a patient or a client with exercise who's suffering with burnout.
I think, Steve, it's while exercise is the greatest pill of all, it's about finding the person where they're at right now. And of course, there can be a huge variation. You know, somebody could be experiencing burnout, but already have a very high level of aerobic exercise, or somebody maybe have become a couch potato and everything in between. So, you know, it's about finding somebody where they're at. Personally, I've found yoga to be a great practice to support somebody when they've been challenged in terms of their mental health, whether it's burnout, anxiety, stress from any source, because a yoga practice is very gentle, it's very restorative, it's very intricative, it's very sort of mind body, and it can be very gentle, and it can be very much focusing on the breathing, maybe with kind of yoga nidra, or it can be much more intense. So from an aerobic point of view, so something like yoga can be great. You know, I really am a great advocate for exercising outdoors in nature, because, you know, time in nature is really so potentially restorative for your mental well-being, for feelings of creativity. It can boost resilience, lower stress. There's a whole wealth of science backing this up ever since King Lee started the forest bathing movement in Japan in the 1980s. And I actually do forest therapy, immersive walks and experiences in the award-winning Mount Congreve Gardens here in my home city. So it's something that's catching on here in Ireland as well. But really, time in nature, I nearly call it exercise squared. If you can imagine it compounding the benefits of exercise. So literally going for a walk in nature, listening to the birds singing, looking at the lovely fractal patterns of the leaves, inhaling all those phytoncides from the plants, that can be so restorative. So something as simple as that can be really, really good. You know, if you have the motivation, and if you have the confidence, and if you have the support strategy, because these are really important things. If somebody's trying to build a new habit or trying to bring something back into their life, it's about, you know, confidence, motivation, and support. But you need to figure out, can somebody join a class, or can they go on their own, or have they somebody will go with them, or could they afford a trainer or whatever? So there's all sorts of different combinations that can work. But whatever you can do to encourage somebody to become active or more active, and to see the exercise they're taking as being a very effective and important medicine. Now, this isn't just about staying in shape, or this isn't just about getting ripped, or you know, working on your toning or your flexibility. This is about your health, the greatest asset you have. And I'm saying that, you know, exercise is probably more important than any medication you can be given. It's, you know, it's that important, and it needs to be treated in the same manner. So it's really a keystone thing to do, and it's to figure out how you can, you know, literally move as if your life depends on it, because sometimes it does.
Yeah, very profound. And do you have sort of a minimum on steps, you know, being like moving like 8,000 steps or 10,000 steps, or someone sort of, just because people think they move a lot, people think they're doing a lot, but they don't really.
Well,
yeah.
what I say, Steve, is every step counts. You know, if you're not moving at all, and you walk 1,000 steps today, isn't that great? That's progress. I'm much more interested in progress than perfection. And see, progress is a journey for all of us that never ends. And there's no failure with progress. Whereas if you give somebody a bar they don't reach, and then their mindset kicks in and says, well, you know, I can't go back to Dr. Mark now because I'm not doing the 10,000 steps a day. So, you know, if you look at the science, I suppose the science would say that the lowest mortality rates right now, this is based on research out of the US just before Christmas, was seen in people that did 12,000 steps or more a day. but that's the lowest level of mortality. But I mean, you get, if you are not exercising at all, any movement is going to really dramatically increase your health statistics. So, you know, if you're coming from a very low base, a little is good, more is better, much more is much better. So, and I see it as being like an upward spiral. If you, a lot of it is to do with confidence. If somebody gets moving a little bit, they feel better, they they're doing something they enjoy as well. I think that's so important. If you're walking, maybe there's a friend and you could walk and talk. I teach young family doctors in my practice, the Waterford Health Park, and often for our teaching sessions, we will walk and talk because it gets us both out of our chair, and we walk to a local coffee shop, might grab a coffee and walk back. So we get 40 minutes of walking into our 1 hour tutorial. I call it talking. So you can look at all the ways, Steve, that you can bring more movement into your day. And, you know, I'm just going to share this with you. You know, when I got off the plane, when we came back from South Africa, we flew into London. We got off the plane and we came around to this area where there was a wide stairs and there was a fairly narrow, there was actually 2 narrow escalators. The escalators were jam-packed full of people going up about 50 or 100 steps. The stairs was wide empty. And what do? I go to the stairs and I take them 2 steps at a time. And I do that every time I get off a plane. And it's not to say, oh, I'm great or whatever. It's simply, that's a reminder for me that every single day I can choose. You know, Robert Frost put it very well. He said, 2 paths diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the road less traveled, and it's made all the difference. So every single day, Steve, you and I and everybody listening can choose to go down that health enhancing path of progress, 1 step at a time.
Brilliant, brilliant. And maybe you just want to unpack, because I know exercise is so fundamental. It's so important for just, you know, all-cause mortality reduction, and just, you know, about these myokines and doing resistance training that John did. How important is that for people with burnout?
Being stronger and doing strength and resistance training is incredibly important for all sorts of reasons. You know, from probably at the age of 40 onwards, we're getting into a stage of what's called biological aging as humans, and we can lose maybe 7, even 10% of our lean muscle mass every decade. And that makes us frailer, that increases our biological age, it reduces our metabolism and increases our tendency to store visceral fat and makes us frailer. It can weaken our bones, increase the risk of falls, and so on. Okay, so that's what the natural trend is. Resistance training reverses that trend. Now, what we are learning is that it has incredible benefits on the brain and the body. The brain and body are so interconnected. You can't really think about the mind without thinking about the body, as you know, and vice versa. When you lift weights, you move your muscles and you release these substances called myokines. They cross the blood-brain barrier in the brain. They increase endorphins. They increase neurochemicals in the brain like noradrenaline, which puts a brake on anxiety, makes you feel more calm, makes you feel more confident. And it allows you to grow new brain cells and connections, neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, which gives you a stronger, more agile, resilient, adaptive brain. So you can think of new solutions. You can be sharper. You can be more agile. You can think more clearly. Downstairs in the body, it does an equally, if not more, number of good things. It increases the functionality of your mitochondria, there, the Duracell batteries in your cells. It increases the number of mitochondria in your cells, which sort of increases your capacity for more energy and vitality. It increases your pain threshold. It increases what's called insulin sensitivity, so you can burn up fat and sugar more effectively and sort of fine-tune your metabolism. So it has a host of benefits, and it is at least as important I believe, as cardio exercise. If you're talking about exercise in its totality, and it's often forgotten. It's a I in my experience, I've been a family doctor now for 30 years. It's a blind spot for many people. A lot of people equate strength training with either being an elite athlete or being, whether you're a boxer or a rugby player or a footballer or whatever. They don't think it's for them. In other words, they don't think it's for older men. It is. They don't think it's for women. It is. It's for everybody. And at any stage, you can increase your muscle strength and muscle capacity quite quickly. It's really interesting. Over a period of 2 to 3 months, you can become significantly stronger.
Sure. It sounds incredible. And, I think strength training is as important, if for some people, even more important, especially if they don't have a lot of muscle bulk and their muscle composition is not good. Because I think
And Steve,
sarcopenia, yeah.
you're dead right. And, the other really interesting thing about it is it can really boost your self-confidence. And for somebody like John, we spoke about earlier, who was experiencing burnout, their self-confidence and self-esteem, they're on the floor. And they need support to get back up there. And one of the great things about doing strength training is when you start to hit some numbers and you start to exceed the numbers that you've set for yourself or the numbers that your trainer has set for you, it can be tremendously empowering in terms of boosting your self-confidence. When you do your set of reps at a certain number, and when you see yourself making small, steady progress over the weeks and months, it can really, I think it's really an underrated, an under-recognized benefit of strength training, that's what I call that self-empowerment piece.
Brilliant. Let's move on to food that's really beneficial for burnout. What would you recommend to your patients and your clients, specifically with regards to burnout?
Well, I think again, it's about knowing yourself. So it's the most important thing is not what somebody tells you to do, and it's not what's in the book or not what's on, it's what you're actually doing. So I think start with, being really honest with yourself, keeping your journal, as we said, and just tracking your eating habits for perhaps for a week or so, including a weekend or any unusual night or day, and focus on what you're eating, when you're eating it, in other words, the timing, and 3, how you're feeling when you're eating. In other words, the why. In other words, are you comfort eating? Is this emotional eating? Are you eating because you're hungry? So if you go back to the what you're eating, I think the best definition of nutrition I've ever come across is, eat real food, not too much, and mostly plants. So eat real food. By that I mean eat food that's real, as opposed to being ultra processed. So eat not too much. I mean, there's a beautiful old Japanese term, I think it's attributed back to Confucian times, called hara hashibu, which is this concept of eat until you're no longer hungry, as opposed to eating until you're absolutely full up. So eating until you're no longer hungry means generally eating until you're about 80% full. And that means being aware of your eating when you're eating. In other words, not to be eating with your mobile phone or laptop in one hand and the fork in the other. That's distracted eating. To give full attention and presence to your eating when you're doing it. And number 3 is, is why you're eating what you're eating. In other words, is there an emotional component? Are you feeling stressed? Are you feeling anxious? Are you upset? And of course, the timing of eating is really important as well. I mean, I spoke earlier about not eating late at night, but certainly there's a lot of research now in this space of intermittent fasting that, if you can get everything you eat at least within a 12-hour window, I think that's the sweet spot. In other words, if you have breakfast at 7:30 in the morning, finish your eating and drinking by 7:30 at night. Now, some people would advocate longer periods, maybe up to 14 hours of fasting in 24, even 16 hours. People have spoken about 18 hours, but I think if you can do 12, I think that's a good start. But at least give your cells 12 hours and 24 to rest and regenerate and recuperate and recharge. And I think that's really important. I do think that it is really important to tune into how much sugar you're consuming, and to really, in terms of the ultra processed foods, to really try and minimize added sugars, because they really, sugar spikes up the blood sugar, which then spikes insulin release, which can impact on cortisol and stress hormones, and can play havoc with your mood and make you feel more anxious and more on edge as well. So, to try and eat foods that are going to love you back, as I say, lots of color, the Mediterranean approach, the 7 colors of the rainbow, lots of plants, lots of beans, peas, and lentils. Personally, I'm a great fan of spices, and I love all those chili peppers, and I love the hot, spicy dishes. They're not everyone's cup of tea, but I think, look, yeah, food is one of life's great pleasures, and I'm always very mindful myself, Steve, not to be ever seen as getting up on a high stool and lecturing to people as to what they should or should not eat, because some people aren't in the position where they can choose. Some people are struggling to put bread on the table every day of their lives. But if you're in a position where you can choose what you eat, some of the cheapest foods that you can get may be the most healthiest. If you think about whole grain rice, if you think about different types of beans, vegetables, and so on. So it's really to try and keep it simple, eat lots of color, try and eat real food, and really enjoy your food. I mean, I think it's not about going on diets or saying I can't have this or I can't have that. That's not sustainable. It's to come up with an eating plan that says, look, 90 or 95% of the time I'm going to focus on these types of really good, real quality foods. And yeah, I'm going to have my treats, and I'm going to have my special occasions and so on. But I'm going to value my health. And because I value my health, and because I want to feel good, and I want to be well in the world for all these people that care about me, it means I'm going to choose as wisely as I can.
Brilliant. Great summary on food there. Real nutrient-dense food, which I think is crucially important, that helps us not eat all this ultra-processed food. Wonderful. Now, Dr. Mark, having done functional medicine for 17 years and looking at self-quantification and looking at cortisol, DHEA, cortisol ratio, things like ferritin, vitamin D, red cell magnesium, these important labs. And I think a lot of people that I'm looking now, I just look at they're highly deficient or they've got excesses. I'm seeing a huge problem with fibrinogen now, post the pandemic, post just a whole bunch of, I don't know, viruses. I've never seen people so sick, ever. And obviously in my life, really trying to boost people's immune system that has been hammered through stress and toxicity and diet and just the environment people in. But what would be your top labs, or what would you look at that would be important if someone's come in and they've tried the lifestyle, but they seem to be fighting sort of biological war within themselves, and you pick up significant deficiencies or excesses?
Well, I like to keep it simple, but I think, specific tests will be done by any person's doctor depending on the specific symptoms. But in general terms, I'm always interested in whether somebody is suffering from, cellular inflammation and what would be termed metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome, or syndrome X, is this very prevalent condition due to a combination of often raised blood fat or triglycerides, raised cholesterol, low high density lipoprotein cholesterol, raised blood pressure, and raised visceral fat as evidenced by abdominal circumference. So in my TED talk, I had the tape measure exercise. And I think that's really, really important, is to know the size of your belly. Size really does matter. If your visceral fat stores are up, that's a really important sign that you are likely to be suffering from cellular inflammation. So I think looking at that in terms of the lipid profile, your 90-day sugar test, your HbA1c can be very important to signpost pre-diabetes and risk of that developing. CRP can be a useful measure for inflammation. And, I think in my part of the world, I think nearly everybody is deficient in vitamin D because we don't get year-round sunshine, unlike in South Africa. So generally, unless somebody is suffering from some sort of strange endocrinological disorder, we almost always would advocate for vitamin D supplementation pretty much year-round in Ireland. At the very least between October and April when there's really no sunshine. So I think that's really important. And of course, some people are deficient in vitamins as well, whether it's vitamin B12 or B9, which is folic acid. But I think really the big thing really is cellular inflammation secondary to high levels of visceral fat, which of course is brought on through this kind of toxic combination of, as you said, sleep deprivation, toxic stress, sometimes alcohol, lack of or suboptimal exercise, and too much ultra processed foods in the diet. And when those things, they synergistically add or compound with each other to have very negative impacts on somebody's long-term health.
Cool. Just one last question on the labs. Maybe testosterone, there's a 50% decrease in testosterone levels in the last 30 years and across the board, male and female, that's causing significant issues. I've never seen teenagers come in with such low testosterone and just, gynecomastia, when they got man boobs, and just a real problem. And then obviously the extreme of that is with, people just dumping TRT and using that, which is also carries its own concerns and management. But what about the sex hormones and estrogen dominance? Do you find that's a problem with patients with burnout?
Well, you certainly see it with the increased obesity and the increased visceral fat stores and the issues with that. And you do see quite a few men with low testosterone. Now, for me, when I see a man with low testosterone, I'm inclined to really look at their lifestyle. That's really where I like to go. Certainly, initially, if there's nothing else of concern going on, I like to really emphasize the resistance training and really get somebody on a good program there. And I like to get people to look at their dietary habits and so on. I think that's really important. As opposed to thinking that there's a pill that's just going to simply fix it. So I really like people to really step up and really take ownership of their own health journey in terms of positive lifestyle improvements. And often people will improve. It's incredible. What's really interesting is how nothing is static, Steve, how everything is in a state of flux, as Epictetus or Heraclitus, the philosopher, once wrote. Everything's in a state of flux, which means everything is constantly changing. We're constantly changing. So really the question for all of us is, are we changing in a health enhancing or in a health depleting direction? And that's a choice you and I can make every day of our lives.
Fantastic. Now, Dr. Mark, maybe we're coming to the end of the show. Anything sort of that you've really found beneficial, infrared saunas or light therapy, or maybe methylene blue or antioxidants like quercetin, something that you've just found through practice has really worked? I mean, we've got all this ancestral wisdom now, this lifestyle medicine, which is incredible. I know that you spoke in your TED Talk, which is about, I summarize it as post-traumatic growth, not post-traumatic stress disorder. You go through something and you get stronger, and you build your emotional health and your psychological health, your mental health, to be able to become more resilient and more anti-fragile. But anything else you want to mention, just, that you found really beneficial for burnout patients?
I think, back to that idea of growth, I think that's really important, the post-traumatic growth. And you can use the journal to reframe your experiences. moving away from the sort of how I've suffered or what I've lost to how I can grow, what I've learned, how can I become a little bit wiser, a little bit stronger, a little bit better. I think that's really important for all of us in life, because we all have speed bumps along the way. We all have setbacks. We all have stressors. Things happen, life happens to all of us while we're busy making plans. But I think one thing that really supports that, Steve, one thing that really connects with sort of, I suppose, nearly everything else we've been talking about is this idea of knowing your why, to start with why. And that's back to purpose. The Japanese call it ikigai, that sweet spot of the 4 questions of, what do you love to do? What are you good at, your strengths? What does the world need? And how can you be valued? So the sweet spot of that, but really reconnecting with your purpose. And purpose is not something that we pursue in life. It's not something we chase. It comes out of us, Steve. It's in there, and we build purpose out of our history, out of the family we've come from, out of our values, out of our community where we were raised, out of our life experiences, out of our passions, out of our interests, out of our strengths, out of the, who we believe we are. And when you can reconnect with that inner sense of purpose, it changes everything. Because, when you change how you see things, the things you look at start to change a little bit differently. But when you connect more with your purpose, you connect with that bigger why. And, for me, that's why I feel so privileged to have this conversation with you today, why I'm really so passionate about this idea of lifestyle as medicine, the idea of positive health, because it's my purpose, Steve, to try and support positive change in the world, one conversation, one day at a time. So if there's even one person listening to this show who makes some improvements and learns something useful, to me, our time together will have been worthwhile, because for me, it's all about purpose. And my purpose, I'm really clear, Steve, it's about service, and it's about trying to empower and encourage others to live with more vitality and be good to themselves in this journey called life.
Thanks, Dr. Mark. And I just want you to just expand at the end of the show, because we've come in here. It seems like Farmageddon is happening for most people, what that is, and a pull after every ill. And I know you've shared purpose, which is very, very important. Ikigai for the Okinawans, Meraki for the Icarians. So well versed with this, and I think our community and audience knows it. But it seems like people, because of this survival brain, just taking the most convenient way forward to try and deal with dis-ease, and that's a pill. Maybe just expand a little bit on Farmageddon and a pull after every ill, and just a message of hope. I know you've given many messages of hope through the journaling, through the purpose. Has been wonderful. But let's just summarize it up for people listening.
Well, I'm not anti-medicine or anti-medication. I mean, I'm a doctor, medical doctor. I'm a scientist. But I always want to see what the evidence is. And if you've got meningitis, antibiotics will save your life. If you get hit by a truck, intensive care can be life-saving. If you get a clot in your heart, a clot buster will save your life. So, but I think what's happened in the last 70, 80 years is there's been an increasing move towards pill-dependent solutions for problems that often have much deeper roots. And I believe that, sometimes medication is only the sticking plaster, whereas really you need to get down to the roots and get down to the foundation of what the underlying issues are. And of course, the power of now means the way our brains are designed, we will always want what's right in front of us now, as opposed to, looking at a time down the road in the future. So sometimes the pill or the painkillers might seem like just the easy answer, whereas really getting into the gym and getting on the exercise program, or going to yoga might be the answer for your long-term back issue, as opposed to popping painkillers 2 or 3 times a day. So I think we now also have a tsunami of chronic health conditions coming down the tracks. You've got, aging, and so many people with type 2 diabetes, with heart disease, memory issues, weight issues, mental health challenges, and increasingly various degrees of medication are being proposed for all of these conditions. So if you've got 2 or 3 of these conditions, you could end up on a lot of tablets. And what's interesting, if you look at the lifestyle as medicine approach, which is really that integration of the 6 pillars, which is, and we've mentioned them: exercise and movement, number 1; 2, restorative sleep; 3, good food; 4, recharge from stress; 5, rich, supportive relationships; and 6, avoiding noxious substances. If you look at that approach, can not just effectively treat many chronic health conditions, it can prevent complications and may even reverse them in some cases. So this is a much more empowering approach to take. It's not either or, it's the best of both. But we've shown that exercise can be better than 10 separate medications that are used to treat various conditions. It's incredible how your body can improve over time. So I would say the message of hope is this: no matter where you are right now, no matter what's going on, things can improve. And it starts with you choosing to become a more active participant in your own well-being, knowing yourself better, building what I call your health IQ, learning more about your specific health issues, getting yourself properly checked out, knowing your numbers, knowing what works for you, and being willing to conduct various experiments to see if they can support you to improve your health and improve your everyday lived experience. Maybe it's an experiment of walking more steps. Maybe it's an experiment of getting into a class and starting to lift some weights. You mightn't have done it for 30 years. Start low and go slow. It's all about starting. Maybe an experiment might be to join a new class, meet new people, build new friendships. Maybe it might be an experiment of trying meditation, having that hot bath at night, maybe trying a sauna, maybe trying a cold shower for 30 seconds at the end in the morning, keeping a written journal. There's so many things: a gratitude practice, being kinder, volunteer, get out into your community, make a difference in the lives of others, serve others more. There's so many things all of us can do. It's all about starting. Never stop starting. And I think it's really something that your future self will thank you for.
Wow. Well summarized. What a wealth of knowledge. Look, it's all about starting. Things can improve. Your health IQ, well said. And just really appreciate you. Just want to blow wind in your sails, and for your calling and for your courage, for your book, The Vitality Mark. So maybe just end off, where can people connect with you, or where can they sort of listen to you more or hear more about this incredible sort of lifestyle as medicine that you're propagating?
Well, thank you so much, Steve. I have a website. It's just my name, Dr Mark Rowe, ROWE.com. And links to all my social media channels are there. I try and put up some positive content pretty much every day. I also have a podcast called In the Doctor's Chair, and I don't have any commercials on that, but it's just, there's a whole wealth of very useful standalone topics and a lot of great interviews as well. And it's all in support of you improving your health and living with more vitality. So as I said, I'm so grateful to you, Steve, for having me, and keep up the great work that you're doing. And it's great to collaborate, because it's only by having these great conversations that we can move forward together. Better together, as I say.
Brilliant. Well, you're at another home in South Africa, here in Johannesburg, and anytime you come through, we'd love to have you here. We can go out and have a meal, or I can direct you to different parts of this incredible continent. But once again, thank you so much. I salute you, honor you, and really thank you for your courage and your calling. And hopefully we can chat soon again.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for having me. Take care. Bye.